Stoicism is becoming more popular, and I've been trying to really understand why that is. And so I sort of traced it back. Obviously, you have Socrates, right, as sort of the grandfather of Stoicism, of all Western philosophy, really, but particularly Stoicism. And then Stoicism came about. You have obviously, the Stoics that we know about today. Sometime later, Christianity came about, and there's tremendous overlap between Stoicism and Christianity. And one of the things I've been thinking about in terms of sort of where I guess the overlap with that is, like if you take Stoicism, and I know this isn't a perfect analogy, so bear with me, but just try and bear with me abstractly here. If you take Stoicism, which obviously assumes all externals are indifferent, right? Music is indifferent. Even like relationships and communities are indifferent because they can be bad. They can develop your character positively, or they can develop your character negatively. Mm-hmm. Now, in some sense, what I think Christianity did, and I know it's not perfect, but they sort of took Stoicism and then threw on music on top. It's like, okay, now we have church representing beauty. Now we have some music, and here's a bunch of stories, and here's a community for you, and here's what you need to learn. Here's what you need to take from those stories. Here's what you need to learn from that music. So they give you sort of this package, this full package, right? Like, I think Christianity in many ways, it is a more complete package than Stoicism, because I think in Stoicism, because it's in many ways, I feel like it's a skeleton, and you have to fill in the blanks in order to make it work with your individual life. Okay. Now, the beauty of that is that it's compatible, I think, for pretty much any walk of life. I really believe that. And Christianity, maybe, I mean, I know it's not so, because I know I take a lot of value in Christianity and learning from it, but it's not for me. Where I'm going with this is, we spoke last time about sort of the house analogy, where you have, the house which philosophers build. Let's say Seneca built to explain Stoicism in his modern day. And then you have underneath the foundations of Stoicism, which you may say, the cardinal virtues, live according to nature, all that good stuff. And then you have the implicit ideas underneath. I don't know if you remember when we spoke about that personally. We spoke a bit about that, but I've been rethinking that a little bit, because as I mentioned earlier, I feel like Christianity has built upon Stoicism in many ways. And so I sort of think that what's happening now, and obviously there's still a lot of Christians out there, but certainly in my generation, it feels like people are slowly moving away to that and moving more towards Stoicism. And not just my generation, but lots of people. And so maybe the analogy is more like, you have maybe our psychology, which is the ground, and the Paleolithic and shamanistic religions. And then on top of that, the foundation is more like what the Stoics were talking about and what Socrates was talking about, dialogue, rationality, reason. And then Christianity sort of built a house on top of that, which is, like we talked about earlier, music, community, beauty, church, and so on. And so maybe what we're doing as a society in some ways is, a lot of people are finding issue with the house, and so they're digging deeper into the foundations, which is actually the Socratic method and Stoicism. I don't know. This is something I've just been thinking about, and I wanted to bounce it off you, because I know you have a really deep understanding of Stoicism, and I think you mentioned your daughter is a Christian as well, so presumably you have a bit of familiarity with that. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like, what do you make of that? Do you think that has something to do with maybe why people are more inclined to go towards Stoicism in the modern day?
I guess, right or wrong, I see it a little bit of a different progression that brought us to where we are today. And briefly, I would say, if we were to roll back the clock, let's say, 300 years from today, go back to at least the 17th century. In the 17th century, the world was the Western world, and I'm going to limit my comments to the Western world. The Western world was largely theistic. You would have been hard pressed to find someone who would walk up to you and say, "Yeah, I'm an atheist." That was very rare, and if you did say it, you were in many cases putting your career, your livelihood, maybe even your life at risk by making such a statement. So over the course of the next, couple of centuries, up until, the end of the 19th century, we see a slow secularization of the world. Charles Taylor in his book, traces this very clearly in his book, The Secular Age, and how we went from a place where everyone believed in God to kind of a place where there's a multitude of beliefs, and where denying the existence of God is now normal. Well, at the end of the 19th century, so we have Hume, and we have Darwin, and we have now here comes Nietzsche, and Nietzsche, who was very adamantly opposed to the Christians, but was also a very deep thinker with tremendous insight into a deep psychology, human psychology, and when he saw what was coming, which was, okay, yeah, I want this Christian infrastructure to be torn down, but when we tear that down, something has to take its place. And Nietzsche knew that there wasn't anything in place. So that's why we see, people talk about him and say, God is dead, God is dead. And they think that is, Nietzsche's celebrating that God is dead. They need to go back and read The Gay Science, which is the book that comes out of. And, the madman is running through the village saying, God is dead, we've killed him. And the villagers are mocking him. And he's saying, right. No, who are we to erase the horizon and to pull the moon down from the sky, if I'm quoting that correctly. But the point is that we move into the 20th century, where the idea of God has basically been to a large degree erased. Over the course of the 20th century, fewer and fewer people are aligning themselves with any form of religious practice. I don't even know what the statistics are today, but it's a large number. So that brings us to the beginning of the 21st century, when we have this sudden interest in Stoicism. And why would that come about? Here's what I believe. I believe that we've reached a point in society where the atheism, the agnosticism, and its inherent nihilism has finally reached a breaking point for the average person. And they realize, my life is meaningless. There's no point to this. There's got to be more. Everything that I've been taught tells me that this is all just a freak accident, that there's no real inherent meaning in life, that there is no God, and people are looking for something, anything. So in America in the 1960s, people were dabbling with Hinduism and Buddhism, and still are. But now you have Stoicism, and Stoicism is kind of unique in that there's this blend of rationality with a deep spirituality. So people pick up the Stoic texts and they start to read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. And I know this from personal experience because I was a hardcore atheist in the 1990s, the first time I picked up the Meditations. And I probably didn't make it to Meditation 3 before I put it back on the bookshelf, because I just couldn't get beyond all the God talk. It was clear to me that there's a deep sense of religiousness and spirituality in this. And I think that that's what people are resonating with. Now we've got a conflict. These people who've been taught and raised as agnostics or atheists, who went to college and had their professors, mock religious belief, and they've spent their entire adult life thinking that if you believe in anything, you're stupid and ignorant, and we all need to rely on scientific facts and rationality. And now they read Stoicism, and there's something there that resonates with them, but they've got to get rid of that God stuff. So that's where you have modern Stoicism. I like all of this stuff, but I don't want God to go along with it. The thing that they fail to realize is the reason why you like it is because the God stuff is there. You just don't want to accept that. Because if you extract that, you end up with just rational philosophy. How many people really want to go back not that many people say, I just want to go back and be an academic philosopher. I'm really interested in academic philosophy. I'm really interested in, and some people are interested in Platonism, but not as a practice. They may go with Neoplatonism. So we end up with this really weird situation where in modern times, and I talk about it using the metaphor of World War I and the trench warfare, where if you're at all familiar with World War I, what happened is both sides ended up basically in a stalemate, and you had deeply entrenched sides, and in the middle you had no man's land. And it was called no man's land because if you stepped foot out into no man's land, you were going to get shot. You were going to get killed. So they very rarely, they didn't want to cross no man's land. And in this stalemate on the two sides, the modern stalemate today is monotheistic religions on one side, in the West largely Abrahamic religions, and on the other side we have atheism. And both of those can be very fundamentalist. And if you step out of either of those sides, if you step out from Christianity and say, well, I want something a little bit more rational, if you step out from atheism and say, I want something a little bit more spiritual, and you step into the no man's land in between, you're likely going to get shot by both sides. And therein lies the risk. And I think therein lies the challenge that we have as traditional Stoics, because we are in a philosophical battle. Largely, ironically, I don't end up in arguments on my Facebook page with Christians. Christians don't come in and say, the Stoic conception of God is wrong, and you need to believe in Jesus Christ. And Christians don't do that. They come in and they see Stoicism and they see a lot that's similar to Christianity, but they don't feel the need to be compelled to tell traditional Stoics they're wrong. Atheists, on the other hand, I mean, it has lessened in the last year or so, but when I first opened that Facebook page in 2015, it was a melee. Excuse me. With the atheists coming in and telling us, you're stupid, it's religion, it's faith. One of the famous memes is Stoicism is not a religion. You hear that everywhere. And there are a lot of implications of that. So here we are, again, traditional Stoicism, I think, falls in this middle ground with some other very rational spiritualities that neither the atheists nor the theists really like.